Imagine sitting on a mountain of $400 million. That is, buy a private island and several luxury jets kind of money. Now, take a deep breath and imagine waking up one day only to realize you don't just have $0, but you actually owe 23 million more. It sounds like a total nightmare, doesn't it? Well, for the man known as Iron Mike, that wasn't a bad dream. It was a cold, brutal reality. We are talking about the baddest man on the planet going from the absolute peak of sports royalty to a financial hole so deep it seemed like there was no way out. Can you even wrap your head around losing that kind of fortune? It is a figure that would make anyone's head spin and stay spinning for a long time. The sports world was rocked to its core in 2003 when Mike Tyson officially filed for bankruptcy. It was a bombshell that no one saw coming, even with the constant rumors swirling about his wild spending habits. This was a man who literally owned the world at one point, yet there he was, legally declaring that he couldn't pay his basic bills. To understand how such a massive crash could happen, we have to travel back to where it all began, and let me tell you, it was a long, hard climb from the bottom of the ladder to the top of the mountain. Long before the glitz, the flashing lights, and the heavy gold belts, Mike was just a kid from the rough streets of Brownsville, Brooklyn. If you know anything about Brownsville, you know it's a place that hardens you fast or breaks you completely. Young Mike wasn't the intimidating force we know today. He was actually a shy, bullied kid with a high-pitched voice who found solace in raising pigeons on the rooftops. But everything changed when a neighborhood bully killed one of his birds right in front of him. That was the moment the iron was forged. That shy kid snapped, and suddenly he was a juvenile delinquent heading for a dark end, arrested dozens of times before he even hit his teens. He was a kid with no direction and a lot of pent-up rage that needed a home. It seemed like he was destined for a life behind bars until he was discovered and taken in by the legendary trainer Cus D'Amato. Cus wasn't just a boxing coach, he was a surrogate father who saw a spark of greatness where everyone else saw a lost cause. He took that raw, chaotic energy and channeled it into a terrifying peekaboo style of boxing that emphasized head movement and explosive power. Under his guidance, Mike wasn't just learning how to throw a punch, he was learning how to become a king. Cus molded him into a human wrecking ball, a force of nature that moved with a speed and ferocity that defied belief. And man, did that training pay off. At just 20 years old, while most kids were still trying to figure out what to do with their lives, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. He didn't just win his fights, he dismantled his opponents with a psychological edge that made them lose their nerve before they even stepped into the ring. He became a global phenomenon, a cultural icon that everyone wanted a piece of. He wasn't just a boxer, he was a brand, a one-man army that seemed completely unstoppable. He was the man every guy wanted to be and every opponent feared to face. With that kind of dominance, the money started flowing in like a massive tidal wave. We're talking about massive pay-per-view checks that broke records every time he fought in Las Vegas. He had the world at his feet with huge endorsement deals from giants like Pepsi and Nintendo. People were obsessed with his raw power and his intimidating persona. At that time, did he ever think the party would end? Probably not. When you're 20 years old and you're the king of the world, you feel completely invincible. The checks kept getting bigger, the mansions got more luxurious, and the entire world was his playground. But here is the mystery that still haunts sports history and leaves fans scratching their heads. How does a man with hundreds of millions in the bank end up sleeping on a friend's couch? Was it the vultures in suits waiting for their cut? Or was it the monster within? We're diving deep into the dark side of the fame to see how it all fell apart. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The fall of Iron Mike is even more shocking than his rise, and you won't want to miss what happens when the money starts to disappear and the pressure starts to mount. It is a wild ride of excess, betrayal, and a lifestyle that was moving way too fast for anyone to survive without a crash. So, let's talk about the legendary Tyson lifestyle in all its wild and unfiltered glory. We have all heard of celebrities buying fancy things, but Mike took it to a level that was basically stratospheric. I mean, who in their right mind buys 3 white Bengal tigers? We aren't talking about house cats here. We are talking about massive 500-pound apex predators living in your backyard. Just the monthly bill for the premium meat, and the professional trainers needed to keep them from eating. The neighbors was costing him thousands upon thousands of dollars every single month. It was a flex, sure, but it was a flex that was eating his bank account alive. Did he ever stop to think about the long-term cost? Probably not when he was the king of the world, and the money seemed like it would never run out. And then there was the house, or should I say the collection of palaces. In one of his massive mansions, he decided he needed a little something special for his first wife, Robin Givens. So what does Mike do? He drops $2 million on a solid gold bathtub. Yes, you heard that right. A literal tub made of pure gold. At the time, he likely thought it was just a drop in the bucket, but looking back, that is exactly the kind of splurge that didn't age well at all. Between the exotic pets, the gold furniture, and the constant parties, the money was flying out of his pockets faster than he could knock people out in the ring. Speaking of things moving fast, Mike's car collection was basically a high-end luxury dealership. We are talking about dozens of Bentleys, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis parked in his various driveways. But here is the kicker. He didn't even drive half of them. There are legendary stories of Mike just giving these luxury cars away like they were candy. If a friend mentioned they liked a specific car, he would just toss them the keys and tell them to keep it. He even gave them to complete strangers. Can you imagine just walking down the street and the baddest man on the planet hands you a brand new Rolls Royce just because he's in a generous mood? It was a sign that he had zero concept of how quickly a fortune can vanish when you treat it like it's infinite. But we can't blame it all on the tigers and the cars. You have to look at the people hanging around the honeypot. Enter the one and only Don King. You know, the guy, the big hair, the flashy suits, and the only in America catchphrase. He was the man managing the money and the fights. And for a long time, it seemed like they were the ultimate power duo. But behind the scenes, things were getting incredibly messy. Tyson eventually realized that the math simply wasn't adding up. He later sued Don King for a staggering $100 million, claiming the legendary promoter had cheated him out of his hard-earned cash. It was a classic vultures in suits situation, and it left Mike feeling completely betrayed. Was Don King the real reason for the downfall, or just a part of a much bigger problem? While he was fighting legal battles, Mike's personal life was hitting a brick wall. The messy divorce from Robin Givens was a high-profile, expensive disaster that drained even more of his resources. Then came 1992, the year the music really stopped. Mike was convicted and sent to prison for 3 years. When you are the biggest athlete in the world and you go behind bars, your earning power hits zero overnight. But those mansions, those lawyers, and those taxes, they don't stop. The bills kept piling up while Mike sat in a bunk, and by the time he got out, his financial foundation was cracked beyond repair. He tried to make a comeback. But then came the infamous 1997 rematch with Evander Holyfield. You know exactly what happened. The ear-biting incident that shocked the entire planet. It wasn't just a disqualification, it was a total professional meltdown. The commission slapped him with a $3 million fine and suspended his boxing license. Suddenly, the baddest man was also the unemployable man. The cash flow didn't just slow down, it completely evaporated. By the early 2000s, the evidence of the crash was everywhere. Those legendary mansions were being foreclosed on one by one. The flashy jewelry was being pawned for pennies just to pay for daily expenses. To top it all off, the IRS was knocking at the door, demanding millions in back taxes. It was a complete financial wipeout. From a $400 million empire to a man $23 million in debt. It was a total disaster, and the world was watching Iron Mike hit rock bottom in slow motion. But as dark as it looked, this wasn't the end of his story. Just when everyone thought Iron Mike was down for the count, the universe threw a curveball that nobody saw coming. Imagine being $23 million in debt, having lost your mansions, your cars, and even your dignity in the eyes of many. How do you even begin to climb out of a hole that deep? Well, for Mike, the ladder out of the abyss didn't come from a boxing ring, but from a movie set in Las Vegas. In 2009, he made a tiny cameo in the comedy The Hangover. Do you remember that scene where he knocks out Zach Galifianakis while singing along to Phil Collins? That one moment of self-deprecating humor did more for his career than a dozen comeback fights. It showed the world that the baddest man on the planet could laugh at himself, and suddenly the public's fear turned into genuine affection. It was the start of the greatest rebranding in sports history. This shift from scary to lovable was a masterclass in staying relevant. Mike realized he didn't need to be the person people were afraid of anymore. He could just be Mike. He took his life story to Broadway in a raw one-man show, and he even voiced a hilarious cartoon version of himself in Mike Tyson Mysteries. He was everywhere. But this time, he was Uncle Mike, the funny and surprisingly wise veteran of life's hardest battles. He had come a long way from the kid mentored by Cus D'Amato, and he had finally survived the era of being exploited by figures like Don King. He moved past the pain of the Robin Givens era and the shame of the Evander Holyfield incident to find a new path. But while the fame was back, what about the fortune? Mike decided to venture into an industry that was just beginning to boom, cannabis. He launched Tyson Ranch in California, creating a green empire that is now legendary. Rumors say his weed products bring in over $500,000 a month, from being totally broke and drowning in debt to becoming a cannabis mogul. It is arguably the most Iron Mike way to make a financial comeback, turning a controversial plant into a literal gold mine for his future. And he didn't stop there. He fully embraced the digital age with his hit podcast, Hotboxin' with Mike Tyson. Suddenly, we weren't just seeing him punch people. We were seeing him sit down with the biggest stars in the world for soul-to-soul conversations. People fell in love with Philosopher Mike, the man who spoke about his struggles with incredible honesty. His engagement numbers are through the roof, proving that his personal brand is actually stronger now than it ever was during his peak. But the itch for the ring never truly went away. In a move that shocked the world, he announced a high-profile return to face off against the YouTuber-turned-boxer Jake Paul. Why would a man in his late 50s step back through those ropes? Is it for the pure love of the sport, or is it that massive multi-million-dollar payday? Whatever the reason, the entire world is still watching, proving that Iron Mike is still the biggest draw in the business. Today, financial experts estimate his net worth has climbed back into the tens of millions. He didn't just survive his mistakes, he rebuilt a brand that is a powerhouse of entertainment, media, and entrepreneurship. Mike Tyson's story is the definitive tale of redemption. It shows that no matter how far you fall or how much you lose, you can always rewrite your final chapter if you have the heart to change. He went from a wrecking ball to a wise man, from bankruptcy to business mogul, and from a public villain to a beloved global icon. What do you think? Is Mike finally safe from the shadows of his past, or is the fierce spirit of Iron Mike always lurking just beneath the surface? The journey from the streets of Brownsville to the heights of fame, through the fire of absolute ruin, and all the way back to the top is nothing short of a miracle. Let us know in the comments what you think of this transformation. Is Mike Tyson the greatest comeback story in sports history? Don't forget to hit the like button.